Young-goon is a young woman working in a factory that manufactures radios. Her childhood was marked by tragedy. Her grandmother was institutionalized after developing a delusion that she was a mouse, surviving only on radishes for months. Witnessing her grandmother being taken away left a lasting impression on Young-goon, fueling a deep-seated resentment toward doctors, whom she calls the White Ones. Over time, she too began to experience delusions, convincing herself that she was a cyborg. One day at work, her obsession reaches a breaking point. She slits her wrists and connects it to an electrical outlet, attempting to recharge herself. This act lands her in a psychiatric institution, where she is surrounded by a variety of eccentric patients. Dr. Choi Silji, her assigned psychiatrist, is baffled by her case and struggles to determine the right course of treatment. On her first day, Young-goon is greeted by a nurse named Oh Sol-mi, who takes her on a tour of the facility, introducing her to the other patients and explaining their conditions. However, it soon becomes clear that Sol-mi is not actually a nurse. She is another patient suffering from mythomania, a disorder that causes compulsive lying to compensate for memory loss. Young-goon remains silent throughout the day, refusing to interact with anyone. But late at night, she roams the hallways, engaging in one-sided conversations with lights, machines, and appliances. Believing herself to be one of them, she shares exaggerated stories, asks questions, and grows frustrated when they fail to respond. During one of these late-night encounters, she asks a vending machine for tea. A fellow patient, Park Il-sun, notices her distress and inserts a coin, allowing her to receive a drink. Il-sun has been diagnosed with kleptomania and antisocial tendencies. His compulsion to steal is so notorious that other patients believe he can even steal personal traits. They blame him for their losses, whether real or imagined. At mealtime, she refuses to eat, believing that licking batteries is sufficient to keep her energy levels up. Another patient, Gob Dan, takes advantage of this, eating all the food from her tray. Every night, Young-goon obsessively listens to a tube radio, waiting for instructions on how to enhance her cyborg abilities, even making the surrounding light bulbs listen along. Dr. Choi holds weekly group therapy sessions where patients discuss their experiences. During one such session, a patient named Yun accuses Il-sun of stealing his talent for ping pong. Gob Dan also claims that he took her appetite, preventing her from eating for 2 days until he returned it. More patients pile on similar accusations. In reality, Il-sun can only steal physical objects. His supposed ability to take traits is merely a projection of their illnesses. Young-goon grows increasingly fascinated by Il-sun and his rumored power. One day, she overhears him saying that he stole Thursday from the calendar. Curious, she checks her drawer and finds that her underwear labeled Thursday is missing. Convinced of his abilities, she asks him to steal her sympathy so she can carry out revenge against the White Ones. Il-sun, however, explains that he cannot take anything unless the person truly despises it. Since Young-goon willingly offers her sympathy, he is unable to remove it. One night, he notices that she always wears her grandmother's dentures while talking to machines. As an experiment, he steals them and attempts to communicate with a vending machine himself. The next morning, when Young-goon discovers the dentures missing, she panics. During the next group therapy session, Il-sun secretly tries to return them to her bag, but Young-goon catches him and attacks him in a fit of rage. Later that night, the two secretly meet and Il-sun performs a symbolic theft of her sympathy. Afterward, Young-goon fantasizes about going on a violent rampage, eliminating the hospital staff with gun-like hands. However, her energy quickly depletes, and she collapses. Dr. Choi soon discovers that Young-goon has been refusing food and surviving only on battery licking. Concerned for her health, he instructs Gob Dan to stop taking food from her tray. That night, Gob Dan attempts to generate energy by rubbing her socks together, hoping to gain the strength to escape to a place with better food. Meanwhile, Young-goon lies motionless in her bed, too weak to move. The following day, Il-sun opens up to another patient, Sol-mi. He reveals that he grew up in a neglectful home where his parents constantly fought, making him feel invisible. To gain attention, he began stealing, even if it meant being noticed for the wrong reasons. Despite his condition, he optimistically believes that his compulsion to steal will fade within the next 40 to 50 years. Il-sun voluntarily admitted himself to the institution to avoid ending up in prison. After finishing his story, Sol-mi asks why he chose to confide in her instead of the other patients. He explains that she is scheduled for shock therapy today, meaning she will forget everything he said anyway. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi contacts Young-goon's mother to discuss her deteriorating condition. The doctors suggest shock therapy to encourage her to eat, and her mother consents, willing to allow anything that might help her daughter recover. Young-goon undergoes the procedure and experiences it as if she is being recharged, thoroughly enjoying it. Upon regaining consciousness, she envisions her grandmother beside her. Filled with renewed determination, she vows to show no mercy and destroy the White Ones. Feeling fully powered, she imagines herself transforming into a true cyborg, going on a rampage and eliminating all hospital staff. However, this fantasy is interrupted when she wakes up restrained in the stabilization room. The doctors are force-feeding her through tubes as she still refuses to eat. Concerned for her, Il-soon organizes a hunger strike among the patients, demanding that she be released. When that fails, he storms into the stabilization room, protesting for her right to refuse food. Before being dragged out by hospital staff, he discreetly hands Young-gun a string telephone so they can communicate in secret. That night, they use the makeshift phone to talk through the window. Il-soon gives her Gobdan's so-called magic socks, which Young-gun imagines allow her to float through the air. As they converse, she envisions them standing together in a vast sunlit field. When Il-soon asks why she refuses to eat, she insists that cyborgs cannot consume human food without dying. In her vision, her grandmother appears tethered to a string she cannot escape from. Young-gun apologizes for being too compassionate, but before her grandmother can reveal an important truth, she is pulled away. The next day, Young-gun's mother visits to inform her of her grandmother's passing. She even gives Young-gun some of the old woman's ashes, assuming she would appreciate the gesture. However, upon learning that Young-gun told Il-soon about believing she is a cyborg, her mother is furious and warns her never to reveal this to anyone else. After the visit, Young-gun buries her grandmother's dentures, a computer mouse, and her ashes as a farewell tribute. Overcome with grief, she breaks down in tears, and Il-soon comforts her. Their moment of closeness leads to a kiss, but Young-gun collapses immediately afterward due to extreme weakness. As her condition worsens, she remains steadfast in her refusal to eat, even as she approaches the brink of death. Dr. Choi tries to uncover the reason, but Young-gun, obeying her mother's command, remains silent about her belief that she is a cyborg. Seeing her suffering, Il-soon devises a plan. He constructs a device from his mother's last photograph and presents it to Young-gun, claiming that it has the power to convert human food into energy for cyborgs. Pretending to implant it into her back, he convinces her that eating is now safe. The next morning, he asks the cafeteria staff to make the food especially appetizing and patiently teaches Young-gun how to eat rice. As she hesitantly takes her first bite, the other patients watch in anticipation. She looks down at her stomach and imagines the rice being transformed into energy through Il-soon's device. Relieved, he embraces her, knowing she will survive. Later, he buries his mother's photograph alongside Young-gun's grandmother's items, ensuring she never discovers the truth about his deception. In a private session with Dr. Choi, Young-gun finally opens up about her past. She shares how she and her grandmother were inseparable, but her parents disapproved of their bond. She recalls chasing after the ambulance on her bicycle the day her grandmother was taken away, trying desperately to keep up. In her memory, her grandmother was attempting to tell her something significant about her life's purpose, but Young-gun could only see her lips moving, unable to understand her final words. Dr. Choi listens with empathy and offers Young-gun a comforting embrace. For the first time, Young-gun admits the real reason behind her refusal to eat. She believes she is a cyborg. Now understanding the depth of her delusion, Dr. Choi gains new insight into her condition. Young-gun then makes a promise to share everything with her in future sessions, and the two eat chocolate together. Later, Young-gun and Il-soon attempt to decipher what her grandmother had been trying to tell her before she was taken away. After much thought, they piece together a vague message. Young-gun must self-destruct by absorbing 1 billion volts of electricity. Since this was supposedly her grandmother's final wish, she decides to fulfill it. The next time it rains, Young-gun and Il-soon head to an open field, preparing for her to be struck by lightning. She carries an antenna, believing it will channel the electricity. They set up a tent to wait, but a strong gust of wind blows it away in the middle of the night. As they rush to protect their food and supplies from the rain, Il-soon discreetly places the missing cork from their wine bottle atop Young-gun's antenna. This subtle act ensures the lightning won't actually strike her, while still allowing her to believe in her mission. In the end, as the sun rises, the two of them sit together, watching the sky change colors.